Welcome to Fire Up Your Life with Tony Fitzgerald. If you've liked what you watched, please smash that subscribe button. Hi, everybody. Today we have Dr. Sidney Turner from Resilient Retreat, and I just took a tour of that place the other day, and it was amazing. I really appreciate you coming in, and I really like to discuss what you guys are doing. Where did the idea come from?
Yeah.
How did you get into the business? So if you could just do a really quick introduction, we'll get into that.
Yeah, so I'm a trauma psychologist and a researcher. My background was in academia, publishing research on trauma, and I was a little bit frustrated by how long it takes research to translate into practice. On average, about 20 years for research to translate into practice. And it's because we've got all the researchers sitting around a table talking with each other and all the practitioners over here talking with each other, and they don't talk between the two groups, between each other. So I thought something needs to be done now. We have too many people struggling with trauma, and we need to be translating that research faster. We know more now, and we can be doing better. So I left academia and started a nonprofit, which is Resilient Retreat. And we offer free and confidential services for people who've been impacted by trauma, specifically people who've gone through personal trauma, like survivors of abuse, and also people who witness trauma in the workplace, like our first responders, our nonprofit workers, medical professionals. And really, we focus on offering all of those evidence-based services that aren't widely available in our community. Most people know therapy, medication, those things can help people, right? But there's a lot of other evidence-based things that can help people, like therapy dog. We have our therapy dog here, Journey, with us. We do animal therapy. We do art and music programs. Time outside in nature is absolutely huge. Yoga and meditation, among many, many other things that we offer.
That's incredible. And I I find your work to be really important in our community. And something you mentioned that I'd never really thought about is you mentioned other nonprofits, and I can imagine just went right to people who might be handling the kids and families of domestic abuse. I never really, in my mind, thought about the kind of stress and maybe compassion fatigue that people could go through in that.
Yes, actually, yes. People who do domestic violence work absolutely see
Absolutely.
really challenging things, and we do serve those nonprofits and their workers that work there. So both their clients and their workers, so that they can come back to work recharged and better able to thrive and cope.
What from kid Sydney to now,
Yeah.
what made you get into this field in general?
So I have my own personal story with trauma. I'm not sure how much you've talked here about adverse childhood experiences or ACE scores, but in essence, it's a score up to 10 of how many different adverse childhood experiences you've had. And my score is a 10, which is the highest that you can have. And I grew up with PTSD. My baseline was PTSD for most of my life. And really, I did therapy. I tried medication, and it moved the needle a little bit for me, but not a whole lot, because the trauma was so baked into my development and who I was. And so, really, the things that moved the needle for me most were the things we offer at Resilient Retreat. Really, what I was struggling with was my entire nervous system was completely dysregulated, and no amount of talking my way out of that was going to fix that problem. So I always compare it to our bodies as having a gas and a brake. Our gas is our fight or flight, which is great because when we have those bear chasing us moments, it's great to have our gas
Because
pedal.
that happens a
Yeah,
lot, right? Bears. Yes.
exactly. Well, and then on the flip side, we have our brake, which is our rest and digest,
Right.
which is our ability to obviously digest our food, sleep at night, be calm and present in the moment. And my body was stuck in a chronic state of gas, and I had no idea how to use my brake pedal. And so a lot of the things that really helped me address my own personal trauma were those body regulation things like yoga, meditation, And dance was actually a big part of what helped me heal. And so I'm glad to say, after like 20 years of having PTSD and being told that I would probably never not have it, I don't have PTSD anymore. I don't meet the criteria anymore, which I'm really grateful for.
Well, that's an incredible testimony, and most of us get into the things that have highly affected us. If you want to live a fulfilled life and a fulfilled career, get into something that you know that you can have an impact from your experiences.
Totally, totally. I feel like it's the biggest gift and blessing for me to be able to share my personal story and share what's helped me, and hopefully it will help others as well.
You know, from a biblical perspective and from a perspective of what people say is, you know, they people say, and wrongly, they say, God will never give you more than your shoulders can bear. And that's not true.
Mhm.
Because the idea is, you know, whether or not the challenge is put on you by humans, by the spirit realm, by whatever it is that you choose to believe, those challenges are there, and they often break us. And you would never, you know, and the challenges are meant to typically make us stronger, and we do get stronger by it. But depending upon our stages of development, as a kid or throughout being 8 or 9 or 12 or now you're an adult, where your faith is based and
Mm.
how you feel about yourself and how you've grown through this, I mean, you're going to have multiple outcomes.
Mhm.
And it's just not the case. And nowhere in the Bible does it say that he'll give you no more than you can handle. It just says he will be there through that struggle, you know?
Absolutely.
So I think people have a false sense of that, you know, and this you've got your trauma stress, which is obviously it can create diamonds,
Mhm.
you know, and sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes people remain in the coal, you know, and your regular day stress, you know, if your goal and dream isn't big enough, you know, no pressure, no diamonds, right?
Mhm.
So I can, you know, relate to uh, that on many levels. So you guys started a nonprofit how long ago?
We were founded in 2019, right before the pandemic.
That's well, and how did you negotiate the pandemic? Did you do a lot of, Zoom meetings with people? Were you able to serve people during that?
Yeah, actually, I think the pandemic really helped propel our growth as an organization because our country had felt a trauma. I mean, it was like we had a big trauma that hit us all at one time. And so people understood trauma in a different way that maybe I think people used to think, oh, trauma happens to other people, not to me. Even if it has happened to them, it was just this like barrier that that's that other thing that other people go through. And I think COVID really helped bring awareness to trauma, and so we saw a big exponential growth. And we moved to an online platform temporarily, and actually that online platform has been so explosive that we now offer about half of our programs in person, and we still offer half online because people have loved them so much.
That's great. How you know, not I mean, that can really expand your reach. Not
Mhm.
everybody can come there every day or during the day.
Yeah.
Not everybody can travel to that, so it's a really great reach. How many patients do you think that you've, you know, worked with or people suffering from this?
Thousands at this point,
Yeah.
and we've served people all over the United States and even some people outside of the country now.
Well,
So
that's incredible.
it's been amazing just to see the wide growth. And the really cool thing about what we do that I'm really proud of is I use my research background, and I have some other colleagues that come in and we evaluate our programs, which is really unique for nonprofits to do. We just don't typically have bandwidths in nonprofits to say, are we actually doing what we think we're doing? And so we're actually able to evaluate our programs, and we're seeing actually big shifts that people are experiencing in terms of PTSD, post traumatic growth, depression, missed days of work due to stress, which has a huge impact on our economy. Like on average, our participants are missing about 6 days a month of work due to stress and health. And so if we can help lower that number, that has a great impact on our economy.
Sure. Has that did that number increase after the pandemic?
Oh, yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
we saw definitely an increase, but we also saw, like, after going through our programs that actually the number there was, like, a 92% decrease in missed days of work. So I really am proud at Resilient Retreat because the tools are very tangible and simple, and they're not costly, and they're things that are accessible to everybody, like journaling, for example. We have like 25 years of research on the benefit of journaling, and it can be just as effective as seeing a therapist. But
Yeah.
guess what? It doesn't cost anything other than having a pen and a paper to do that. So it's really exciting to see these kind of benefits with such seemingly simple interventions.
And it was interesting when I came there. I noticed that they were very like you could do most of these things at home, but
Yes.
they don't know how to apply it or how to use it in a way that is going to help them, you know?
And a big piece is
Um,
building community too. It's that fellowship of bonding
right.
with other people with shared experiences. So I think that's why people like to come to the center because
Sure.
they develop that fellowship. And we've had people become roommates and move in together and
Oh yeah.
and really develop very long friendships as a result of connecting at Resilient Retreat.
Well, I have to share that, I live near the retreat and I live out east of Fruitville. And I drove by that for the past year, because you've got walls that you can't really see in, which is great, and it makes it very exclusive and private. And I would always drive by, try not to get in an accident on the curb, and look in to see what was going. Like if I could see, because I could assume that it was something like that, but I really didn't know what it was for. And honestly, you'd think I would have got on Google a lot sooner, but my wife finally looked at it and she says, "Oh, it's for, post traumatic stress and things like that." I said, "Oh, awesome, awesome." And as Hallie Pilot Young just launched No Blues News, I saw I saw the tree, I
Yeah.
saw the logo,
Yeah.
and immediately realized because I see it every day. It's I can click, I see it every day, and I saw you, and I chased you out the door. You were already on your way, and I'm like, hey, I have to meet with you because I really want to understand what you guys do. And obviously, as a firefighter, I've dealt with a lot of people with this and still continue to meet people throughout my career now that are suffering from these things.
Mhm.
Um, so when I got to the gate and there's a gate you have to have you someone has to let you in, so not everyone's going to come in to just go check it out, right? So went into the gate and it was a nice long driveway, and as soon as the gate closed behind me I could realize that this is a very safe and secure environment that feels cut off from the world in a very good way. And the combination of the modern architecture with the rustic look really is very natural. And
Mhm.
as we walk through the buildings and I went in through the lobby that looks like a living room, it's shaped much like a house. And as soon as we went into the kitchen and saw the big community table and the large kitchen, it felt just like a fire department.
Mhm. It
And
does. It
and
really
it
does.
was like, aside from, firefighters jazzing each other, like, right at that moment, it just felt like Firehouse, and the tour was amazing, and the rooms, the way you guys have it set up. So I really appreciate that, the types of programs that you guys offer. You guys offer day programs and overnight programs, correct?
That's correct.
Can you
Yes.
tell us about those?
Yeah, so people can come for like an hour during the day and try a yoga class, or try equine therapy, for example. Or they can come and stay on a 1 day retreat that's not overnight or up to 3 nights. And really, we kind of our goal is really to help people customize whatever is going to work for them. Like if you have a baby at home, probably going to be hard to stay overnight at the retreat right now. So that's why we have varying options so we can really help meet people's needs along the way. And then if they come to the retreats, I always compare it to like the evidence-based trauma buffet platter. If you come to the retreats, you get to try everything on the buffet platter. If you come to a day program, you get to try just one thing, maybe just the macaroni and cheese today. And then next time you get to try the collard greens and so on and
Yeah.
so forth.
Yeah, and that a lot of people are gonna feel, "Oh, it's just me, it's just my problem, and it's not my family's problem, and I can't leave them for 2 days," and and they feel selfish, and the real reality is that you have to go and spend that time on yourself, and it's not selfish. It's like it's so important for your family. It's so important for you because if you're only spending an hour of disconnected time from the rest of your stressful environment, it's it's tough. But when you if you can get away for an entire day or an entire 2 days from that stressful environment where it's only focusing on your growth, your healing, and understanding, like people are going to have a lot of great things come out of that.
Absolutely. The one thing I wanted to say too is, we serve those two groups, those survivors of abuse and then the helpers and first responders. And 80% of people are in both groups. And I just wanted to say that there's a connection between the two. And the research is really starting to point out, why do some people get compassion fatigue and other people don't? What is that factor? They're starting to think that factor is childhood trauma. So, what I talk a lot about with people is understanding that when we've had prior traumas, like I have, no judgment about that we kind of come into our workplaces with almost like a fuller cup. And then when we experience our trauma that's going on at the workplace, it like adds more, adds more, adds more until the cup is overfloweth. And when you have that childhood trauma, you come in with a fuller cup. So your cup overflows easier than when you don't come in with that childhood trauma. And so I feel like that's the key that's been missing into addressing compassion fatigue for our first responders and helpers is addressing the cumulative impact of trauma and that not all trauma is equal. Childhood trauma adds way more water to your cup than adulthood trauma does.
Well, and brings up such a good point that we should literally market to the first responders in that kind of community because at the beginning of your career, people aren't going to assume that, oh, I'm here a day and I don't need to worry about post traumatic stress. But if you have a program that gets helps them with their cup from childhood, they might have a longer, healthier career and escape it and be able to reframe those things. So there's some really great preventative stuff that could happen for every brand new firefighter, whether you think that you're strong enough to do it or not.
Yes, and that's why I really see our tools as both prevention and intervention. So you don't need to be in crisis to come and use the tools that we're offering. In fact, I would recommend using those tools throughout your entire career, and that will help prevent your cup from overfloweth at work.
I know that Chief Desi is working on a program with some other people to try to get it involved in the fire departments. And I understand you're working with some police too. Have you approached the school board for the firefighter and police and EMS programs to do a class during their initial training that might help them? Have you done that?
Yeah, so we have done some initial training. Like I know with Sarasota Police Department, we've done initial training for all of their new officers that are joining. And we do have an MOU right now with the school board, not related to first responders, also related to schools. Because by the way, our teachers
They get
have a
compassion
ton
fatigue for
of
sure.
compassion
Yeah,
fatigue. And actually, in our most recent assessment, we found that teachers fared off the worst out of all helpers.
I don't doubt that at
So,
all.
yeah, so yes, we need to get people at the beginning of their training, absolutely. And
Well, even
understanding that compassion fatigue is actually very common across many disciplines. And the one thing I hear consistently from every discipline is that they feel like they're the only discipline that's going through this. So when I
right,
talk with first responders, I think it's only them. When I talk to teachers, I think it's only them. When I talk
yeah.
to nonprofit workers. And so I think I'm always trying to build awareness like, hey, you're not alone. There are other people in your field that are going through this, and there are other people outside of your field that are going through this. And this is part of an occupational hazard of the work we do as helpers, myself included. But it's not destiny. Just because construction workers have occupational hazards of heat stroke, that doesn't mean we just accept that they're going to get heat stroke. We take
Sure,
preventative measures to
sure.
prevent heat stroke. It's the same thing for our helpers.
And you said exactly what this podcast is about. We're here. This podcast is really designed. The idea is to let people know that you're not the only one going through a struggle. You're not the only one that may have had childhood trauma or post traumatic stress or anything. Someone might be feeling really down about themselves right now, and over the period of interviews, hoping to show people that everyone has struggled. Like you are
Mhm.
you're a so people have different views of success. right? And it could be Facebook's success, and everyone sees Facebook, and a lot of people, that's your highlight reel, but some people are very real about it. And social media does play a role in trauma, and what you're showing other people too, and people can get a perception that, oh, life is all roses for these
Mm.
successful entrepreneurs, and reality, we're struggling every day to either maintain it, to get there, and we've all struggled. So that is exactly what this
Mhm.
podcast is about.
Thank you for doing that, because the more people we can get out broadcasting this message, the better the impact we'll be able to have faster.
Absolutely. We've we've talked about the facilities. Those all came from donations.
They did. Yeah, and actually the facility itself was designed by our community. So we have a group called Voices of people with lived experience with trauma, and they help design the plans for the space. And they would look at the drawings and say, "No, no, this is not going to feel safe." Safety was a key piece to everything we were doing. So it made me so happy when I heard you mention the
It
word
does.
safety,
Yes.
because literally we spent 2 years talking about safety and what creates a safe space and how you create one for everybody. And so, yeah, a lot of time and energy went into that. So then we designed the space, and then, yes, then we had to go out and fundraise the money to actually build the space during a global pandemic, which was, if I'm being honest, terrifying to think about undergoing. But I felt like the need was so great, and our board felt so as well, that we were willing to take that risk.
And the land, how much land is there?
We've got 84 acres of conservation land.
That's amazing, and it was donated anonymously,
It was.
right?
It was.
And I understand you guys are getting a lake ready for a really, serene, quiet solitude area.
Yes, we are, and we're building a gazebo in the back. There's a lot of walking trails. We've got cows on site, and baby calves, and horses, and so it's really a unique experience being at the retreat. You see deer and gopher tortoises and all kinds of birds and wildlife. It's really like being in old classic Florida.
That's awesome. I can't wait to see that when that's done.
Yeah.
I got a chainsaw too if you need help,
Oh,
so,
okay,
right?
good. We
Yeah.
could always use an extra hand.
I wanted to talk about, you know, the different therapies that some seem straightforward, as, art, letting your
Mhm.
creative, things out, and you had mentioned, um, journaling, and something that I've been doing is I've been writing a book, and I'm not really sure what the book's gonna be called, but it's about traumatic growth,
Yeah.
what I've learned through the fire service, and how it might be able to help others relate to stories, because I think a lot of people, now, my philosophy is no matter what you're going through, someone's got it way worse. And
Mhm.
as we were going through these things, the person that we were helping had it so much worse than us. So it's a very good way to frame things. So if you can hear and experience stories, honestly, the sad thing of tragedy and how people have overcome tragedy, and whether the outcome is good or bad, and what the good things that came out of it, I think that can help a lot of people. So
Totally. And if you think about it, think about brushing your teeth in the morning or exercising. Stress makes your body stronger, right?
right,
If you overbrush your
right,
teeth, obviously you would do some damage, or if you over exercise, you
right,
do some damage. But I really try to focus too on helping people understand that going through stress can actually make you stronger. And that's
right.
that whole phrase, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. There's truth to
Agreed, agreed.
it.
So you've mentioned a few things that I relate to someone. One, there's a show, and I've probably mentioned this a couple times already, and I'll always mention these people that are on the podcast that I follow. And uh, there's a show on Disney Plus. It's called Limitless, and it was from Chris Hemsworth, who is Thor. And Chris Hemsworth has a really genuine desire to take what he has learned through fitness and give it to people. He's got an app that's not that expensive for people to help with their fitness on however you want to receive fitness, whether it's yoga, flexibility. And I find it really valiant to do something like that. But he did this show with Disney with these doctors behind it. And it was a series, I think, of 6 shows about lifespan, longevity, living
Mm.
better, longer. Have you seen that?
I haven't seen it.
It's incredible to
Sounds
watch.
interesting.
Incredible to watch. And one of the things that we talked about, the bear,
Mhm.
well, our fight or flight is designed for the bear. It's designed for the tiger. It's designed for the earth. It's designed for those things. And we live in an environment that is a house
Yeah.
with protected walls
Yeah.
and a couch and food we don't have to hunt.
Mhm.
And we don't have an extreme environment of cold or heat. We don't have an extreme environment of massive amount of fear right now,
Mhm.
unless some tragedy happens in our
Mhm.
family,
Mhm.
right? Or a perceived possibility of. So,
Certainly less than we used to
yeah,
as a species,
right, as a
yes.
species.
Yeah.
And every day we go to work and we have these accumulative stresses, and our bodies react to it like the fight or flight. And what one of the things that they pointed out was they took Chris and they he had to walk this beam. I don't know, it's like 60 feet at the top of the tallest building in Australia. He had to walk out the beam. Now he was
How
protected,
terrifying.
right?
Yeah.
But he couldn't have just gone and done that.
Yeah.
He had to do the work to get there. And they did some drown proofing exercise with him, which honestly made me panic while I was watching it, because that's just scary to have your hands and feet tied while you're bouncing up against. That's scary.
No,
But then
thank you.
they took him to firefighter training
Yeah.
to expose him to that stress
Yeah.
so that he could learn different techniques to help him with his everyday stress. And what they're finding is, because we're not experiencing some of these massive stress moments, the small stress moments are killing us,
Yes, and
you know?
because we know so much about stress, there's actually research now showing it's not stress that kills us, it's what we think about stress that kills us. So if you think stress is going to hurt you, then your blood vessels constrict. If you think that stress is going to make you stronger, then your blood vessels open. So it's actually about how you think about stress too. And what do you hear about stress? Stress is bad. Stress is bad. Stress is bad all the time.
It
So
develops cortisol. It does all these different things.
exactly.
Yeah.
And that's such a simplified, oversimplified explanation of stress. And I think if you look at pretty much every aspect of our lives, you can see that stress can make us stronger. And it's helping to shift that mindset.
How do you recommend someone that's going through any amount of stress right now? Is there a couple of simple steps
Mm.
to reframe that in their mind, that they can repeat to get into a habit of? What would you say?
I think trying new things is always a great way to kind of snap you out of that fight or flight mode. So I always recommend like just trying something new that feels really outside of your comfort zone. Absolutely connecting with somebody that you trust and talking with them about how you're feeling. Just the act of speaking it out loud can actually help you reprocess your stress. So I think that's a key piece of it. And then I'd say anything that can help regulate your nervous system. And for everyone, that's different. Like for me, dance was a big piece, but not everybody's a dancer. It could be going outside, because as soon as you go outside and you go for a walk, your nervous system already starts to shift more into rest and digest. It could be a yoga class, it could be exercise. There's actually like a huge systemic review that was just published showing that exercise is just as effective, if not more effective, than therapy or medication in treating mental health. So,
Yeah.
I mean, there's so many
Physical health too.
yeah, and physical health,
Yeah.
absolutely.
It's yes, it is. And so that brings me to my next person, Dr. Peter Attia, who was one of the doctors on that. And I watch his podcast, and Dr. Lane Norton and Dr. Huberman. And there's a few different people that really get into diet and longevity. And just by listening to them, I formulated my own.
Hypothesis?
Yeah, I took everything and I went and created a diet for my wife and I that was outside of these other diets, because it was all science-based. I lost 27 pounds
Wow.
like that.
Congratulations. That's
And it's
huge.
sustainable and easy. So I'm not selling a diet book, but it, his book is Outlive. And if you can get through the first part of data, the rest of it is really life-changing.
Yes.
But like you said, here are these doctors that are trying to he was a surgeon for cancer, and he would give somebody 6 more months or 2 years, and then he realized that there's a medicine that's a different way, and it's preventative, but you have to look at these key indicators that we're
Mhm.
avoiding to look at early so that we can do a couple of things to keep us healthier and longer. So
I'm
you
just
should
curious, what is that diet? Like, what are the pieces that they
s-
recommend?
so I'm not a nutritionist and I'm not a diet
Yeah.
expert. However,
What's worked for
what
you?
we did is I mean, everyone can say that people will say, "Oh, calories in, calories out don't matter." There's things out there say it's a lie. All indications from all scientific things, studies that are valid show
Mhm.
calories matter.
Mhm.
Calories matter, but it also when you
Mm.
get your calories
Yes.
and how long of a non-eating window you have,
Yeah.
which people call intermittent fasting, but it doesn't have to be extreme is what people think,
And that's
right?
putting stress on your body,
You
by the
know?
way.
Yep.
Intermittent
Yeah.
fasting is putting stress on your body that
Well,
promotes.
and that rest and healing mode, right? After
Yes.
night, your body goes into rest and healing mode, and if you're eating too late at night, then you're actually not ever getting that rest and healing mode, right? You're in digestive mode.
Mhm.
So that was part of it, and then you find your base calories for the day, including your activity level, right? And if you wanna lose a pound a week, you drop 500 calories a day. If you
Yep.
wanna lose 2 pounds, it's 1,000. So for me, I put myself on a 2,400 calorie diet, and I, as we get older, we lose testosterone,
Mhm.
and we are no longer. And I know testosterone grows muscles, but I didn't realize that it's responsible for the synthesis of protein into muscle, right?
Yep.
So you are no longer. If you could eat 100 grams of protein, and you're not going to get the same amount of synthesis as an 18-year-old does. I didn't know that was really the reason why
Yeah.
testosterone does what it does. So in order to maintain a long life, you have to maintain skeletal muscle mass. And it does matter if it's lean, whether it's visceral fat, but like subcutaneous fat does not matter as
Mm.
much. So if you're skinny and have no muscle, the person that has a little bit of fat with a lot of more muscles actually going to live longer
Mhm.
because that muscle's tearing onto your bones, and you're going to get less osteoporosis, and your body's going to function more properly. But you also have to exercise that muscle,
Yeah.
right? And then the other thing is the VO2 max
Yeah.
has to be a certain amount. If you want to live to 90, you got to have it way up here because it does this as we go. So when you can affect it, you got to affect it as much as possible, right? So those are the principles. So with that principle, it's a gram of protein per body weight.
Yep.
And who cares about the other macros?
Yeah.
Like, that's simplifying it
Yeah. No,
to
but that
make it very
helps.
easy for somebody. And if I end up with a Yoho or a Snickers bar, like, I'm gonna pay for it by being hungry later, but if
Mhm.
I track it, I just know that I can't eat this, right? I mean,
Mhm.
your diet shouldn't consist of that, but if you make a mistake on this diet, it doesn't matter
No.
because we're tracking it into MyFitnessPal.
Yeah.
So we track every calories. I could pull you out and show you exactly what I ate today.
Yeah.
And that's the hardest thing that people get into, but now we've been doing it for almost 2
Becomes
months,
a habit.
and we track everything, and as a matter of fact, you feel guilty if you don't track it
Mhm.
because you just have no idea if you're not paying attention. Like, you could have hit your 2,400 calories, but you could have only had 50 calories or 50 grams of protein.
Yeah.
So what you eat matters. So, and then on the days that you're resting, we try to stay at 50 or 60 grams of carbohydrates. On the days that you're working, you can go more. But that's not as important. If you overeat fat, undereat carbs. Most important thing, calories, protein,
Yeah.
the rest fits in. And
Yeah.
that's what has really worked for us, you
I
know?
I love that because it's a more mindful way of eating. I also log my food through MyFitnessPal too. I do something similar to what you're mentioning, and I try to eat closer to, like, a Mediterranean diet is really my goal,
Sure.
and that works best for my body, but I don't think that there's a one size fits all for
No,
everybody.
no, but you know what's interesting is keto works,
Mhm.
and there's reasons for it to be part of your diet, but
Yeah.
not your whole diet.
Yeah.
Carbs are good
Totally.
as long as you're eating the right ones.
Yeah.
We avoid sugar,
Yeah.
high processed, sugar, and we try to avoid most of your processed foods, right? So whole foods. But it's really made a difference. And if now though, if I overeat, like, in order to gain weight, I have to overeat by 1,000 calories
Mhm.
to be
Mhm.
on a gain weight trajectory.
Yeah.
you know? So if you make that, and obviously if I get to the weight that I'm looking for, then I'll figure out what my maintaining is. And we also weigh every single day, because then instead of that one day where you're 5 pounds heavier, like, oh my gosh, it's Friday, 5 pounds heavier. I'm done with this. I want to go eat everything I want to this weekend and go on Monday, and I'm just going to start over. Like, I already messed up. But if you do it for 7 days and you divide it by 7, then that's your average weekly weight.
Yes.
So you might be heavier one day or another. The next week, if it's going up, you might want to wait another week to see, but then you adjust your calories. If it's going up, you might be eating the wrong amount of calories. So as you pay attention to it, now you know exactly, because you're watching your own body and how it reacts. And if it's dropping 2 pounds, you're on the right path, you know. And we also use exercise, obviously. Sorry, that's what I learned.
It sounds like you're using a lot of psychology principles too. There's actually an app called Noom, which uses a lot of psychology principles and really does what you're saying, which is it has you weigh yourself every day, it has you track your calories, and it gives you little helpful tips and tools every day.
And you know, it's okay. So we allow ourselves to understand that we want to live too.
Of course.
And if we're going to go eat a pasta meal, we eat a pasta meal.
Yes.
Like life is too short.
It's not about deprivation. It's about health and wellness. I think that's a different mind shift.
Life is too short to deprive yourself. However, you can also be a glutton.
Yes.
You know,
both can exist simultaneously.
Yes. Right. So that's, and again, the extreme environments too on this show, if you'd see it, talk about being out in nature and how being out in nature without electronics and making your mind have to guide you with maybe a map and a compass, you actually start remembering further back in your years and recover old memories that you might not have ever thought about. So it's a part of helping with Alzheimer's and memory loss and things like that. So.
Absolutely. And then there's this whole new burgeoning field of cold. I don't know if you've heard about these cold
plunges on here too.
And stuff. Yes, which is talking about how to train your nervous system to be more resilient. And it's an exposure to stress. It
develops brown fat,
yes,
which we don't have.
Yes.
And the Inuits have. Like people that are up in cold weather have it. The brown fat, it actually burns calories as opposed to your regular fat. So back to us living in this comfort zone, what's killing us is comfort. Right? So an extreme heat creates proteins that help get rid of certain plaques that cause Alzheimer's.
Yes.
So it's just, so we no longer expose ourselves to the extreme.
Yes.
We're very comfortable.
But on some levels, we do have extremes like we haven't had before, like social media and weirdness with being on technology. So I want to acknowledge that there are unique stressors that we're facing now. They might not be as life-threatening as when we were cavemen, but they are still stressors. And I think building that tolerance and that resilience muscle can be really key in helping to manage and cope when those stressors do arise.
Right. And with a bear, you're exerting lots of physical force, lots of running, lots of cardio, right? And with social media, when you get stressed up, you're just sitting there.
Yeah.
And letting all that stress build up.
And not to mention the social media is very addictive. So there's really every minute you're on social media, they've done studies on it, your happiness goes down, and it's a very addictive. I find it with my phone too. Like I'm going and grabbing my phone first thing in the morning. I'm like, what am I doing? I got to keep my phone downstairs. And they're designed that way on purpose for us to, be consumers.
Yes, you're right. And I forget what I mentioned to my wife the other day, and they say that your phone doesn't listen to you, but it came right up on an ad. And I'm like, there's no way your phone isn't. Sorry, I'm not trying to be not trying to be a conspiracy theorist, but I tell you, every time I mention something, how does it know that I'm looking for it? Because you get an ad for it, you know? So it's interesting. Yeah. I find social media to be a double-edged sword. I have to use social media because I work with 300 to 400 realtors at any given time, and I can't meet with them all the week, but they got to see what I'm doing because it's that whole know, like, and trust thing. So social media is really big in real estate because I just show what my family's doing so that people can get to know who I am. Put this out there so that it can get some legs. And I get about 30% of my business because of
Mhm.
social media. And at the same time, it's a slippery slope of looking at stuff that is going to stress you out, you know?
Mhm. It is. It's a fine line. We
Right?
can acknowledge that there are benefits to social
Yeah.
media while also acknowledging that it's incredibly addictive and
Incredibly addictive. Yeah,
yeah,
absolutely.
yeah.
Yeah. My wife and I often look at each other and go, when are we going to put that down?
I know.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
know. I try to be mindful of it.
Yeah. So the other therapy that I'm curious about is equine therapy. And how does that help me as a patient?
The really interesting thing about horses in particular is they tend to be a mirror for what's going on within you. So I've worked with some participants before that are very closed off, arms closed, like this. The horses won't work with you when you're in that kind of and horses are fight or flight animals, so they're prone to being scared and spooked easily. And so really if you want a horse to work with you, and we have them do different tasks and activities with the horses. And so there's a collaboration that happens with the horses, and you have to work together. And in order to work together, you have to be able to communicate and interact with the horse. And so if you're coming in like this, the horse is like, no way, buddy, I don't want anything to do with you. So it actually is all nonverbal in communication. And I find people leaving more like this when they leave those groups because of that.
Well, they have to let their guard down in order to have a horse have attention with them. Is that what you're saying?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
That sounds similar to what you guys are doing with the brain wave
Yeah, neurofeedback.
neurofeedback.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so neurofeedback in essence is retraining your brain waves to function more optimally. It's like exercise for your brain.
I think I probably need that.
I think all of us could use neurofeedback. And just so you know, I've done 60 sessions. It works, highly effective.
Yeah.
I recommend it for everybody. But when you go through trauma, you kind of develop these neural pathways that are more prone to anxiety and depression. And in essence, neurofeedback helps you retrain your neural pathways to function like they more normally would. And it works over like 20 sessions. You watch Netflix. You don't have to talk about your trauma. So I find it actually works best with our most severely, so our participants with most severe mental health challenges.
So, and I understand that as you're watching, if something happens, you lose focus, or maybe is it that your mind's drifting to something else,
Hmm.
that the visual starts graying out and blacking out, and then you have to focus back on what you're watching for it to reappear.
Yeah, it's
What is it that your mind is doing that causes that to happen?
It's all about your brain waves. So if you go to the cardiologist and they hook you up, they can tell are your heart waves working the way they should or not. It's
Hmm.
very easy and people understand that. Well, your brain works the same way. We can look, okay, beta, theta, delta, alpha, different brain waves, and they're supposed to be within certain frequencies. And so when you bounce out of those frequencies, the show dims. So it's not about what you concentrate on, it's more about what's going on with your waves that you're not consciously aware of.
Okay,
Yeah, and
that's
it's
interesting.
slow and incremental, and I'll give you an example. We had a participant that came in recently that was not able to drive. They had such a severe anxiety concern that they weren't able to drive, and within 7 sessions in neurofeedback, they were driving again after a year of not driving. So it's really powerful to see that big of shifts in people with something that hard to move the needle on in such a short time period.
I have someone in my life that experienced some trauma
Mhm.
from a vehicle accident, and they're
Mhm.
having a hard time feeling comfortable driving. So
Yeah, for
that's a
sure.
great person to
Have them reach out.
recommend.
We'd be
Yeah,
happy to
absolutely.
connect with them.
Yeah.
So, yeah,
This,
so there's things like that that are hard. Like, if you went to a therapist, maybe you would be able to move the needle on that, but those are harder things to
yeah,
make adjustments with talk therapy alone.
that's that's a very interesting. Before we started rolling, we were talking about traumatic stress versus traumatic growth. And I was saying that just as firefighters, and I'm sure police and other people, as you come in, you're indoctrinated into the fire service. You're talked about. post-traumatic stress is talked about to the point to where you just feel that, "Oh, I've experienced trauma. I must have stress." It's almost like you paint it on yourself that this is going to occur. You can allow it to occur, not taking away from any tragedies and things like that. It occurs. And I also wanna say that there's something that's not talked about enough, which is post-traumatic growth,
Mhm.
which is what, the book that I'm working on. Again, not a psychiatrist or psychologist, but I would really love your feedback when I put it out there on the lessons that, what I think can help other people. I'd really like to have your clinical feedback on it too.
Yeah, and I think the field is starting to shift a little bit away from like, oh, we're the clinicians or the experts here, and more towards the people with lived experience.
Yeah.
Because I think, there's what they teach you in a textbook, and then there's people who've actually lived it. And I think it's really important that people share their stories like you are, because that's really how we learn from things is through people's lived experiences. And we think we understand things, but we're going to know 10 years different things than we know now. So I feel like sharing our lived experiences is one of the biggest gifts we can give in moving the needle in this field.
Yeah, I agree, and one of the things, because people it's funny, I've been out of the fire service for 8 years, realistically, just since COVID, but I was out of the fire department. I retired in 2014, and, I was gonna go become a chief somewhere. I had an application in, went through some really incredible, evaluation process, and at the same time was getting a mortgage from a company, and the company that I was getting a mortgage from, I got friendly with the loan officer, and the loan officer said, "I know you're retiring, and I think you should come do this." And I'm like, "What are you talking about?"
What?
Like, I kick down doors and rescue babies. You kidding me? I'm not built for mortgages. I only own a suit for an interview, it was just so different than what I had thought, and he says, "No, no, no, this is a people business, this is a relational business, and
Mm.
we can teach you all the other stuff." So, I ended up going down that road, and about 6 months in after retirement, I was sitting in my bed, and it was at nighttime, and I was woke by chest pain,
Mm.
and I was not sure if I was experiencing a heart attack because as firefighter, EMT, you recognize these signs, but there was also signs that there were things that weren't happening that made me confused, and I just sat there silently trying to figure out if I should wake someone and me go to the emergency room, or is this going to subside? And I sat there for a while. I used some of our techniques that we learned through training for confined space. We learn about the phobic wave and how to adjust from
Mhm.
those massive fear and act only when moments of clarity happen. Take that breath. So I was able to get away from it, but it felt like I laid there for a while, and I
Mm.
and I realized that I had a panic attack
Mhm.
because I had a major identity crisis.
Mhm.
Yeah, I was always a firefighter, like, since I was 23,
Yeah, that was who
right?
you are. That's your identity.
Yeah, I mean, a lot
Mm.
of my life, 20 well, actually, I stayed yeah, 20 yeah, 23, right? So, and I worked for one department for 21 years, I worked a couple other places, so leaving that and no longer being firefighter because 'cause I'm a loan officer, I'm, manager,
Yeah.
whatever it is, right? But you can see you never leave the
No,
fire
it's
service, it
part of
never
you.
leaves you, and it's funny that that really became my like, who am I in this business? So I use that identity, to show trust.
Mm.
Because then I realized when I submitted the picture to our marketing department, and it was that picture. It wasn't a character yet, but it was that picture
Mm.
of me. I had sunglasses on. It was me. That's the best picture I had.
Mm.
And the marketing company said, "Best loan officer picture ever." Right? They're like, "This is great," because everyone
Yeah.
else has a suit, so I looked very different.
Yes.
So I also wanted a picture of the suit, so I ended up having this created, which was, great because now it's the logo for the team, but it's also the logo for my podcast, and And after growing from that and working with realtors, I realized that my best place would be applying my training and knowledge from my career to learn the best operating principles for sales in this business to
Mhm.
serve as many people into homes as possible, and from there I learned a lot that then new realtors I could serve them in order to be happier,
Mhm.
because I had a statistic given to us by our CEO at the time that at the time one of the number one correlations to childhood bullying is parent job satisfaction.
Interesting.
And I thought to myself, well, I know a lot of unhappy people in business, and if I could make a difference for their careers to make them happier, then maybe they go home happier. I
Mhm.
don't
Yeah.
even know if they're going home unhappy or not, but I realize that there's no way of measuring the outcome of that.
Yeah.
But I know if I plant the seed that there should be positive outcomes that I never see.
And what you're talking about is post-traumatic growth is all
Yeah,
about meaning and purpose. That's one of the key tenets of post-traumatic growth, which is meaning and purpose. And we find that is like really key to resilience is having that meaning and purpose, whether it's in your career, whether it's
right.
in your job as a helper, whether it's in your home, having that meaning and purpose is really, really important.
And reframing some of the traumas that I went through or experienced with somebody,
Yeah.
I was able to reframe that, well, who better than me to be there at that moment,
Mhm.
right? Because of my compassion, there's a lot of burned out firefighters that we worked with, or there's burned out, or people that have been there long, ready to get out because of so many changes, right? The fire service can be brutal to its people. The EMS service can be, and the EMS service can create people that are
Mm.
callous, right? Or maybe benign, because it's not callous, but we remove our feelings during that time, so we don't
Mhm.
have to experience these emotions with people that we don't know that are going through these terrible things. So there's a couple instances where one, I held the hand of a 17-year-old girl while she cried for her mommy and died, you
Mm.
know? And people, when you say that to somebody, you're like, well, how are you standing up today?
Yeah.
Like, how do you function after doing these things? And for a while, I just kind of thought, I don't know,
You
just
just do.
you just do, right? But then looking back, realizing that I did evaluate those things, and I thought to myself, well, if someone else was in my position that night and I removed myself, would they have done the same things?
Mm.
Would they have called her mom from her phone to make sure she got to the hospital to try to
Mm.
get her there before her daughter died? We couldn't fly her that night because it was too much wind,
Mhm.
and it was a rough situation, and we transported her to hospital, and she wouldn't let go of my hand, so I continued to hold it, and I went back into the ER and held her hand until the very last moment, and I was able to then go in and meet her parents. The doctor asked me to come in and meet her parents during that time, and, I was able to tell her parents that someone that cared
Mm.
equally, that I was their stand-in for their family at that moment, and it's an emotional moment just to talk about, right?
Mhm.
But that's how you have to reframe things in order to realize that, gosh, man, you were there. You did what maybe someone else wouldn't have done. And while the outcome for the 17-year-old was not good, that family knew that she was cared for.
Yes.
So,
Yes.
and those are the things that, for me, that's why I look at traumatic growth,
Yeah.
right?
Mhm.
I probably have some PTSD in there that raises its head on my weight gain or whatever, relationships,
Totally.
things like that.
Totally.
And I battle it with trying to frame for growth.
Yeah. I love that idea of taking that situation and really understanding the benefit that instead of thinking about all the things you weren't able to do, focus on the things that you were able to do. And
Absolutely.
I think that's a very post-traumatic growth oriented way of thinking.
And I hope that, other people can look at this book and
Yeah.
and get that out of it. That is my goal,
a
you know.
100%. 100%.
So how if someone was very interested in supporting your program, anyone that's listening that might want to donate or might want to get in touch with you, where's the best place for them to go? How can they contribute?
Yeah, so you can either go to our website, which is resilientretreat.org, or you can give us a call at 941-343-0039. And we're always looking for volunteers. We have over 200 people that volunteer their time. That's how we're able to offer our programs at no cost. I'm a volunteer. I've never gotten paid to do any of the stuff I do at Resilient Retreat. I do it because I care about it and I'm really passionate about it. And
Well,
so, really, we wouldn't be able to do what we do without volunteers. And then we also have the opportunity on our website to donate if you'd like to contribute and support our mission.
that's great. If anyone's watching, you go to the website. I'm going to put the link in on Spotify. This podcast is available, video podcast on Spotify. I'll share it throughout social media. We'll put the links up and make sure we share your information. Let me ask you, it's the first time I asked this, but what's your experience on Fire Up Your Life today?
Oh, I really enjoyed it. I feel like I learned a lot from you today, too. And I really appreciate the opportunity to share our stories and to learn from each other.
Is there anything we didn't say that you'd like to cover?
No, I just want to thank you for the opportunity to be here. And hopefully, we can work together in the future.
Yeah, I want to thank you too. And I look forward to looking into volunteering and getting some training that I understand you guys provide. So I appreciate you very much for being here. If anyone's watching this and wants to know more, you guys can contact me or look at the website that we'll have posted. I really appreciate everyone for watching this. And if you like what you saw, please smash the subscribe button and share.